Hello, hello. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write, where I give questionable writing advice through running metaphors. And since I'm listening to your all feedback, I am no longer doing that brand intro thing where it does a little 20-second countdown. So we're jumping right into tonight's episode, and we are going in faster. And thank you everyone for joining us. Richard, you are here. And yes, the AC is on. It is a miserably hot day today. I mean, the weather just broke, so there was a huge torrential downpour, but it is still miserably hot outside. I walked my dog after that, and oh boy, it is rough. So thank you all for being here on a Monday night. Let's get this week started on the right foot and have fun while we're here. So if you've been here for the last two episodes, you know that I firmly believe that the original three seasons of Avatar: The Last Airbender were some of the best examples of modern storytelling. Whether it was the redemption arc of Prince Zuko or the teamwork, well, those were some of the fundamental aspects of it. And there's yet another one. But we'll get into that in just a second, although you can obviously tell by the title of what tonight's episode will be. For what is universally applauded as a kid's show because it was on Nickelodeon, and it delved into some mature themes and topics, including war, genocide, torture, no-win scenarios, and morality. Specifically, there's a multi-arc debate about whether or not it's justified to take a life, especially if doing so will save many more. I'm not going to go into the whole spoilers on there, but the children, teenagers, who are the main focus of Avatar: The Last Airbender, have a decision to make where if they kill one person, they will save thousands, if not tens of thousands, if not the entire world. Again, this is a show that was fundamentally designed for young teenagers. Now, granted, I guess I was in college when the show came out and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And even as an adult, it is incredibly entertaining, but there is a lot of depth in here for something that also airs a lot of the other shows that were on Nickelodeon. Not to bash those, but just this felt a lot more mature than the run-of-the-mill Nickelodeon show. Now, much of my writing style, because as I said, I was in college when this came out, so much of my writing style was crafted by the show, and I encourage you all to watch and rewatch it because it still holds up. For what might be the last time in this Learning from the Best series for at least a while, I'm focusing on one of the series' best all-around characters, Toph. For those who have never seen the show, Toph comes in as a rich aristocratic family. It's a hard word to say, and she acts against them. Prim and proper are two words that would never define Toph. Though there was an episode where she had to play at being an aristocrat and showed she could be what society wants and expects of her, she just chooses not to because she's awesome. In other words, Toph is a strong female character done right. And even more interestingly, she doesn't come in until the second season, wherein we already have some established characters and character dynamics. She's not toxic. She is strong-willed, and if an average earthbender is like a boulder, then she is a landslide or an earthquake. That's how more she feels to be, even though she is the youngest of the group. She is the shortest of the group, and yet she is a force for good, and good luck if you're standing in her way. Yeah. Thank you. Sorry, I'm agreeing with the comments in there that Toph is an absolute badass. Oh, and by the way, so she teaches the primary protagonist important lessons and guides him. And though she joined kind of halfway through the series, depending on how you count things, she's a fan favorite of many of the viewers of the show. And yeah, by the way, she's blind. She's the blind bandit. That was her wrestling name when you're first introduced to her. Yet she refuses to let her disability define her. She's unique in a way which made her an asset to the team. These are some of the writing tips to create an awesome character like Toph, which I try to do within my own writing. And again, much like with teamwork, much like with redemption arcs, how far along and getting there, or how close I come to this monumental example, it varies. But the first step is to, number one, be unexpected. Toph is often a counter to the rest of the team Avatar's rapport. By the end of the first season, we've gotten used to the trios dynamic of Aang, Katara, and Sokka, where you have a brother-sister pair, and then the last Airbender. They're Katara and Sokka are from the Water Tribes. They're brother and sister, and they have their own dynamic, and they're, for as much as they act like brother and sister, they still have very similar personality traits, and they still agree with each other more often than they don't, even if they disagree about the methods of achieving their goals. And yeah, Aang is different from them, but he still kind of goes with the flow, and he looks to them to guidance. That all gets shaken up in season 2 as Toph is introduced. Even the way she trains Aang to use earth bending, earth magic, however you want to call it. It's earth bending in the show, but is essentially functionally earth magic. That forces him out of his comfort zone. I mentioned this last week, and I'll say it again here to reiterate. As an airbender, he fights in an adaptive and reactive manner like the wind. He's quick and ever-flowing or redirecting attacks. So if somebody will be stabbing him with a sword, he will get under the sword and then bend their arm out of the way. Or if somebody's shooting fire at him, he will flow, or he will use the air to circle around him and launch the fire back at them. So he's using somebody else's strength against them, or he's redirecting, or he's like the wind, unable to be caught. During the first season, there's a lot of attempts to physically catch and restrain him, and he just goes in between everyone's attacks. But as the airbender, like I said, he's untouchable is a good way of describing it, where he just moves around. He uses his ability with the wind to move around everyone's attacks. And that's why, similarly, Aang's water bending abilities came so naturally. Air and water are compatible in the methodology behind them. Basically, it amounts to a river flowing downstream along the path of least resistance. If there's an immovable rock or a tree with these thick roots in the way, the river will go around it. I mean, yes, technically it will eventually break down the rock and it will go under the roots or whatever, but it will initially go around whatever's blocking it. Well, Toph is unexpected. She is the X factor. She is the unknown, and she shatters that mannerisms of Aang. She teaches him to break the obstacles in his way. For a group of teenagers who try to avoid trouble or at least work around it, Toph is the unexpected factor, proving that we can't always run or avoid conflict. Sometimes we need to meet it head on. In Toph's case, she makes that point by headbutting rocks and splitting them into pieces. I try to make my characters unpredictable, and it works to a lesser degree than how it did in Avatar: The Last Airbender, because I have a similar ensemble group on the most basic level. It's a ensemble group of people with different abilities, and they're trying to go off on some missions to achieve goals, but they are wildly different from any of the characters here. Anyways, my point being, for every problem in the group, there is a best way of handling it. Then there's 100 other ways. My characters usually handle things in, if not the worst possible way, definitely near the bottom of that list of best ways to handle things. And I really like the unexpected moment in the climax of my first novel where the character tries to hold off an enemy for 5 minutes to give his friends a chance to recover. And that blows up in his face, in everyone's faces, actually. Unpredictability makes characters feel more real, and it's as comical as Toph can be. She is unexpected enough to never feel flat. So going back to my first novel, I aim to write a strong team dynamic. In book 2, I changed that dynamic for one of the characters, actually a bunch of characters due to plot reasons, and I added in a couple of extra characters. By book 3, we now have 2 characters who weren't really in book one or were secondary in book one, and they play major roles. So much so that one of those characters is the prominent point of view and driver of the plot for book three. Now, if someone jumped from book one to book three, I hope they would feel that that turn is unexpected, but believable based on that character growth. Now, of course, if you jump from book one to book three and you skip book two, a lot of things wouldn't make sense. But I want to still be predictably unpredictable, or at least that's my goal, where you can't necessarily see the characters acting as they would in book three without going through book two, but it's unexpected in a way that if you read everything up to that point, you could kind of understand how the characters got to their very bad decision making. Again, they are kind of they are teenagers, so a lot of the decisions they make are not the best. In fact, book four, the entire plot is based around bad decisions. Book four, the book of bad decisions, coming soon. Anyways, number two, Toph is strong. Physically, as I mentioned, she's tiny. She's the shortest member of the team Avatar, yet she's by far the strongest team member. Not only that, but she's headstrong, pushing the team along when they've otherwise given up. Emotionally, she has a lot more strength than we expect for someone of her age, and also maturity for someone we would expect with someone of her age. That also doesn't feel forced. She grew up with everyone catering to her, so she had to rebel against that and learn through failing on her own without anyone to guide her. That makes her one of the more resilient characters that other characters have to rely on so that they can face their own problems. When everyone else is distraught or raging after their Sky Bison and friend Appa gets kidnapped, she keeps everyone moving forward. In fact, she is a large part of the reason why Appa was almost not captured, but also why everyone was saved while Appa was being captured, and additionally, why they have any, not evidence, but any hints as to what might have happened. So Toph feels her emotions, yet doesn't get consumed by them. She recognized that acting out will most likely hinder their ability to reclaim their friend Appa. This one really hits home as one of my main characters is a brawler. In writing book four, I'm showcasing her strengths, both mental and physical, and giving her a lot of internal conflicts to deal with. There's a lot I use to keep my group of friends together and still going on their journeys, because at a lot of points, before a certain point, they can easily just turn around and ignore the call to action. But strong convictions is one of the things that I build into those characters. And let's check out the chats. Sweet. Hey, Mikey, how's it going? Hey, Miss Blogger. And thank you for joining us. So, within the episode that Toph is introduced as the Blind Bandit, I think the episode is actually called The Blind Bandit. She's up against this really big, muscular guy called the Boulder, and the Boulder refers to himself in the third person. So it's always funny because the Boulder feels almost like the straight man to a comedy routine where he's just getting beat up by this tiny little girl. And at the end of it, the Boulder's like, the Boulder recognizes Toph is super good. So exactly what Adriana just said right there. Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. I try to write my characters so that they're interesting, and that's just how they come out on the page. Now, number three, depth. Like Zuko, who I've already talked to in length about, as well as many of the other characters, Toph is multifaceted. She isn't just a powerhouse and solid foundation for the team. She has a dry wit about her and is able to laugh at herself. There are clips of the team desperately trying to find something, and so she'll shout excitedly and point off in a random direction and announce that they found it, only to have everyone get really kind of fake annoyed at her because obviously she didn't find anything. Like clockwork, Sokka falls for it every time though. And it's really funny because then he goes, "Oh, why do you keep doing that?" And she's just laughing the entire time. But the strong presence she tries to exude is often peeled back to reveal an uncertain young girl. Those moments make us realize how the weight of the Avatar world is balancing on the backs of actual children. So the intro is, I believe Aang can save the world. Or sorry, the intro to the show, every episode starts with the phrase, but I believe that Aang can save the world. And yet you see him goofing around as a kid should. They shouldn't have to deal with these global problems, but yet at the same time, it just reinforces that, like I said, the world in Avatar: Last Airbender is quite literally and figuratively balancing on the backs of children. So the decisions that these kids make will ultimately make or break the world. Now, yes, there are bigger factors in there. There's invasions and militaristic um, themes and events, but well, like I said, the kids will choose the fate of the world. Now, in writing characters, make them more. I have two physical fighters that really come to their own in book three, but they are quite different, both in how they use their powers and in how they solve their problems. One is newer to her powers, so she is less willing to literally throw herself at a problem. The other person dives headfirst when a group of people are swarming her friend. But for as strong as they can be, just like with Toph, they are mentally vulnerable. They have moments of weakness, they have moments of doubt, and they have moments where they rise up above all of that. So we need to try and create characters who are more than just their powers, more than just their physical characteristics, more than just one or two problems and goals that they are holding within. Number four, great representation. That's about Toph. She does not let her blindness. She doesn't let her blindness slow her down. Sure, through her earthbending, the she essentially becomes Daredevil from the Marvel universe, as it lets her see the vibrations through the earth. But there are plenty of scenes where this is nullified, such as when she's in the air or injured. So when she's in the air, her feet can't touch the ground or her body can't touch the ground, so she can't really feel the vibrations. And then there's an episode where she burns her feet, and so she obviously can't sense those, so she really feels her limitations and learns to kind of work through them. And in fact, it's only through her blindness that allowed her to detect the world in a unique way. And she was able to sense the earth that was used to forge metal of her prison. And by pushing past the limitations that everyone in the world thinks of, which is metal, is that earthbenders can't bend metal, so they can use a metal prison to trap pretty much anyone except for, say, a firebender or a waterbender with water nearby. But the point is that an earthbender trapped inside of a metal prison is trapped, period. Except Toph uses the vibrations she senses, and she's able to burst out of a prison which everyone thought was impregnable. In that way, she actually invents what is later called, or what she calls, metal bending. And then it's recognized across the whole world of metal bending. So each of the bending methods has a counter. So if you want to trap a waterbender, you put them in a wood box devoid of water, or you can put them in a metal box. And to trap an airbender, you ground them. To trap a firebender, you keep them in a freezer. So these all have inherent weaknesses, which the clever characters circumvent, be it swaying a lot to create water and slice through wood, or a firebender burning through their inner reserve to maintain their strength. Well, Toph, again, like I said, she does something that no one else thought was possible by manipulating the earth within the metal to escape her prison. That was an incredible scene. And we got to see, as she was punching each of the different walls, how the way she sees the world, there were the little grains of earth within the metal, and they sort of lit up on the screen in a really, really cool and creatively done scene. Without going too far into spoilers, although that's, well, without going too far into spoilers for my story, as I've been kind of spoiling Avatar all the way here, but this is again the third episode where I've done a breakdown of Avatar. But this is something that I'm dealing with in my own story. I have foreshadowed certain events, and well, the characters will not start and end book 4 in the same state. How well I handle that, how well the characters are able to move on from certain things, that remains to be seen, and I haven't written yet. It's only in an outline form, but hopefully I will do justice to what the characters deserve. And lastly, number 5, power through training. Toph is one of the strongest magic users in the world, despite being so young. That's a combination of multiple factors. She learned from the true masters of earthbendings, the Badger Moles, and rather than learning from a human being, which is distilling the magic into, say, an art form or a fighting style, she learned from the source of her magic. Now, yes, this is debatable when you factor in the lore from the Legend of Korra and lion turtles and everything along those lines. But the Badger Moles, according to Avatar: The Last Airbender, they were the first earthbenders who then taught humanity. This is like Zuko getting a power up from learning to. This is like Zuko learning from the firebending masters who were the dragons, where his own abilities were kind of not there anymore. And so he learned to look inside himself as the dragons do and become a firebending master. Well, Toph started learning bending extremely early, probably earlier than most. I don't know. We don't really delve into that within the Avatar world, but it seems like that. And she was forged in a crucible of illegal fighting matches. We see her advance in such a short time by creating metal bending, but we also see how her fundamentals were better than any other earthbender encountered in the show up to that point, short of a seemingly crazy 100-year-old man. So even though she is far younger and has a lot less, should have a lot less experience than other people, just by going through her life, by living, by walking around, she's always using earthbending. She's always feeling the world around her and using that in a way to kind of train her and make her better. So it was fully believable that she's able to take on people who are 4, 5, 6 times her own age and succeed. So with that, those are the 5 characteristics that made Toph so amazing and that I'm trying to incorporate into my own stories. Hopefully you found this helpful and you can work these details into your own stories as you write. I am Ben Pick, and thank you for joining me in Running to Write. If you enjoy my praise of Avatar, go ahead and headbutt those like and subscribe buttons. I post running and writing progress on Instagram and Twitter as Running to Write. I've been doing a really bad job about keeping updated on that, so I'm going to try and do better. But we are coming up. It is almost time for my next Running to Write monthly newsletter. So do you want to see what, it's going to sound really sad, but do you want to see what a party for my dog looked like? Then sign up for my newsletter. For those of you who don't know, he has cancer in his heart and was given 4 months to live, which is blessed at this point because that was about a month ago. So we threw him a tree stay party this past Saturday. He has a second round of chemo coming up this Wednesday. And my wife and I are ignorantly optimistic about how his health is. So if you've ever seen him when we get him for a bath or on a walk or take him for a walk on rainy nights, Rufus, as lazy as he is one hell of a fighter. He will go kicking and screaming into a bath, into outside with the water, even when it's a really hot day and the water would feel nice. But yeah, he is definitely a fighter. So we're kind of hoping for the best. And I did kind of lie there because I didn't actually really take any pictures from the party, but there were a couple of stuff that we did afterwards when he was all tuckered out because we had a couple of people over and he spent the first half tearing through 3 different treats and then just got really tired and fell asleep on the couch for the rest of the day. So he was all tuckered out after celebrating, and at this point he knows he's being indulged. So he was just walking up to people and like expecting that they would give him treats, and then they would just obviously give him treats. So it was really fun to watch. And then he had a couple of things they would just sort of tear through, a couple of toys, but then got after he had done sufficient damage to them, he would get bored. So he'd walk to the other room, hop up on the table, pull out another toy, and then just walk back in the room like he knows that he's exactly not supposed to do. So we're making sure that Rufus is living his best life right now. And that's really all we can do. Yeah. That is true. Hey, thank you, Jordan, for joining us. Oh, awesome. I appreciate that. Yeah, keep doing what you do. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I'll stick my fingers in my ears and pretend everything's okay. We'll have a lot more information this time around because every time he goes in for chemo, they do a checkup. So we'll make sure that the fluid is drained out of his body. So he has cancer in his heart. And because that blocks certain things, it spreads fluids to the rest of his body. So the cancer can't remove the tumor. It can't destroy the tumor, but it can slow its growth and slow its spread, which we will hopefully use to prolong his life. Um, and that's what we are working with. Obviously, when he goes in for chemo, they also drain the fluid. So if it gets to a point where they need to drain the fluid more than 3 times, more than once every 3 weeks, we'd have to probably make some hard decisions. But for right now, everything is going good. Once he goes to the chemo, he's a little bit sick for a couple of days, doesn't really eat much with the food, but then he's back to his normal bouncy self. Like this past weekend where he was just tearing apart toys, having fun with everyone who came over. So again, he's the best boy. And I will see you next time. A week from now, it's going to be a long episode, but it's my long foretold learning from the worst. So it's a counter to this 3-part series. It's going to be 1 episode. I'm going to talk about all the recent shows and books I've read where they do really questionable things. And I will break down what I will hopefully never do in my writing and specifically what we can learn from shows that, well, nicely put, are on the decline or they have significant flaws in their storytelling and just so many issues with them. But let's end on a positive note tonight after all that talk about Rufus and next week of learning from the worst. So I will see you next time. Until then, let's rewatch Avatar because, as I mentioned, next week, things are going downhill with my learning from the worst episode. So I probably need to come up with a new name for that, but we are going to learn from the worst examples of my modern TV, movie, and book reading experiences. Take care, and I will see you next week. Yes, Salty Ben will be salty. Oh boy, you guys have no idea. I already have it drafted out. It's going to be a long episode. And yeah, I am not pulling any punches. So see y'all.